I have owned several newer Toyotas and I've also owned a new Land Rover Defender, and I'm here to tell you that the ownership experience is not all that dissimilar. It's actually quite shocking to me, and we're going to talk about it in today's video. Now this video is mainly going to compare the Land Cruiser to the Defender, but I have owned several new Toyotas. And when I say new, all of these Toyotas are a 2020 model year or newer. The first one was a 5th generation 4Runner, 2022 on that. The second one was a 2021 Toyota Sequoia, so that's a 2nd gen Sequoia. And then you had the 250 Land Cruiser, that was a 2024. This Land Cruiser behind me is a 2020, and then finally the Lexus on the other side is a 2025 LX. Now to quickly compare Toyota to Toyota, the ownership cost difference between one of these big Land Cruisers and the Sequoia, the 5th gen 4Runner, or the 250 Land Cruiser is astronomical. With the Sequoia, the 5th gen 4Runner, and the 250 Land Cruiser, it was just basic maintenance, and that was really cheap, and so there wasn't a lot of expense that went into the ownership, and none of those cars had issues in terms of reliability. I had a really good experience with all of them, which was the most surprising with the 250 Land Cruiser. But yeah, if you get a more simplistic Toyota, even with the new generation, it seems like it can be pretty good for the most part. But these big Land Cruisers, on the other hand, it's a completely different story, and let's first talk about just general maintenance costs. The 200 series is going to be a bit less expensive to maintain than 300 here in the US because the 200 has a Toyota badge on it. And because you have this Toyota badge, you take it into a Toyota dealership and you pay Toyota service rates. And what I've kind of seen on average is most Toyota service departments are sub $200 per hour for their labor rate. Whereas with Lexus, I mean, a lot of them are right around $300 per hour, which matches Land Rover. So you pair that higher labor rate, especially for the Lexus, plus the fact that the parts for the Land Cruiser and the LX are all custom built for the vehicles specifically, and things can get expensive, even just regular servicing. I mean, again, we're comparing OEM dealership to OEM dealership with Lexus, Land Rover, and Toyota. If you just get an oil change on a Land Cruiser, like just one singular oil change, a lot of dealers are going to ask $100+ for that. And then you go over to the Lexus side of things, and it could easily be, you know, $200, $300 for an oil change. Now, if we add the higher labor rate, plus the higher parts cost, plus the fact that the maintenance schedule on these is very often, it ends up adding up to be a lot of money. Now, you can technically take these in every 10,000 miles for oil changes, but it's actually recommended to do 5,000 miles, especially in an extreme climate like Utah, because there's just going to be more wear and tear and everything with the vehicles. So every 5,000 miles with either the Land Cruiser or the LX, whatever vehicle you end up choosing, if you're doing a fancy Toyota, you're going to be taking it in for an oil change, and it ain't going to be cheap. However, I do need to mention that Toyota does offer long-term maintenance programs for all of their vehicles, whether it's, again, a Land Cruiser or an LX, whether it's a Toyota or a Lexus. And with those maintenance programs, they do cover the oil changes and everything. And because it's a bundled package, you do save quite a bit of money. The one downside is these packages are purchased through dealerships, and so there could technically be markup applied to that maintenance package. So it, you know, could save you money, could not save you money, depending on how much the dealership marks it up. But if you can get one of these maintenance packages for a reasonable price, it is well worth it, because there are big maintenances with both of these vehicles at 30, 60, and 90,000 miles. And because they're Land Cruisers, the maintenance schedules at those points, especially the 90,000 mile, can be quite expensive. I just did the 30,000 mile on the Land Cruiser, and it actually wasn't all that bad. It was only about $500, but still, I mean, that's not nothing. And this Lexus, on the other hand, I don't have 30,000 miles on it, so I haven't even hit the first one, but I did talk to some people at the dealership, and they told me the 90,000 mile maintenance schedule on this is somewhere around over $3,000. And a big part of the cost is the fact that they have to do some stuff with the fancy hydraulic suspension at 90,000 miles. And a Land Cruiser at 90,000 miles has to do some stuff with the KDSS, so it's not like it doesn't get crazy stuff at 90K. And the best part is, if you don't address these items, if you just skip the maintenance schedule, then the chance of either the KDSS or the active height control, the hydraulic system, of failing goes up exponentially. And I'm not trying to fearmonger you guys into spending a bunch of money at the dealership service department, but I've talked to a ton of people about this whole suspension situation, and this is why so many 100 series have suspension swaps, because pretty much nobody went in and did the 90,000 mile maintenance on their 100 series Land Cruisers, whether it was the Toyota version or the Lexus version, and so all of them have that hydraulic suspension system fail. And you know, there were some issues with the suspension system either way, but a lot of it's just deferred maintenance. So how does this maintenance scheduling and all of that compare to what I experienced over at Land Rover? Like I said, when it comes to the hourly rate, Lexus and Land Rover are pretty similar with what you'll see at dealerships. Toyota is going to be less money, but the parts, it's not really less. I mean, the Land Cruiser, for example, I just had a key cut for it, and the key was like $500 because it says Land Cruiser on the back of it. So like, the parts ends up being super expensive because of the Land Cruiser name. Now, if we bring in oil changes and all that stuff, from my experience with Land Rover, you don't really have a maintenance package to buy like with the Toyotas, so you just pay out of pocket every single time. But yeah, I only had one service in the whole year in terms of like actual service other than problems with the car. We'll talk about the problems a little bit later. But yeah, it was like $500, so similar in cost. And even purchasing a maintenance package with the Land Cruiser and with the Lexus, my cost is roughly going to be about the same per year, at least $500. I mean, the Land Cruiser has been more than $500 this year, and we'll talk about that. But yeah, you're just regular maintenance stuff. You're not really saving money by going with the Toyota. So what about reliability, right? Toyota is way more reliable than Land Rover, and so, you know, maintenance is going to be about the same, but you're going to save a lot when it comes to the big ticket items when something breaks, right? Well, so far this Lexus only has just over 5,000 miles, so I don't have nearly enough mileage for anything to really go wrong. Well, hopefully that's how it works with a new car, but yeah, so far it's actually been good. It's been better than the Defender that I had. At 5,000 miles with our Defender, our power steering went out once. This is no longer an issue with the Defenders. It was an issue with our Defender, but they've kind of fixed that issue. But regardless, yeah, I did have one item. It was obviously covered under warranty at that point. So far the Lexus has technically been more reliable than what we had with the Defender because nothing has gone out at this point. This Land Cruiser, on the other hand, at, you know, 6 years old almost at this point and over 30,000 miles, it's had a little bit. I have never had any engine or transmission issues that have like left us stranded or needed us to take it into the dealership, but I can tell you I have to change the oil at every 5,000 mile interval. The engine and transmission start to perform at a much worse pace, rate, whatever you want to call it, right around the 5,000 mile mark. The power delivery with the engine goes from being smooth to kind of rough a little bit. It's very strange to experience. And the transmission sometimes will just have really harsh shifts, especially coming to a full stop. Sometimes you can like feel the whole transmission just kind of like clunk into first gear. I did the whole 30,000 mile service, which drained the transmission, all that kind of stuff. I did everything that was supposed to be done on the maintenance schedule, so it's not like I'm, you know, behind in maintenance. But it's a weird thing, and again, after I get the oil change done, everything goes back to being smooth, and so it's like this thing has to have 5,000 mile oil changes. And it does make me concerned about the long-term reliability of this powertrain. Again, people have told me it's extremely reliable. I know people with Sequoias that have hundreds of thousands of miles, but I don't know. I'm wondering if the Land Cruiser, because things are tuned differently, if it's not going to be able to go as far. It should go further because it's a Land Cruiser, but who knows? Now, aside from the engine being a little bit weird and the transmission being a little bit weird from time to time, I've had major weather stripping issues with this Land Cruiser. Now, I do have paint protection film on this. I did have a different PPF on it before that was kind of wrapped around deeper. So with the first set of PPF, we did have to remove some of the weather stripping, and that did damage the initial set, and so I actually bought completely new weather stripping for the entire Land Cruiser. Like, all this stuff that you see is new at this point. But as you can see right here, what I've been showing on camera, this little weather strip piece has come up. And just to be clear, the first time it came up was completely my fault. But the second time that it came up, not my fault, and this is the third time that that piece of weather stripping has flown off. Every single time it happens on the interstate. Now, I haven't been able to take it into the dealership quite yet to have them check it out for another time, but it's really weird that it just keeps popping up. The PPF doesn't fold over into that area whatsoever, so the PPF is not getting in the way. And again, I'm ordering an OEM Toyota part, so everything should work, but it doesn't seem like it is. And so that's kind of like a weird kind of fit and finish issue that I'm now having with the Land Cruiser. Again, I caused the initial issue, but after getting new weather stripping, I shouldn't have any further issues. But other than that, both these vehicles have been really good. I've been very impressed with the overall reliability. Again, especially more with the 200 series because it's an older vehicle with more miles. The Lexus, it's too new to really be able to get a good judgment on it. And if we are being completely fair in this video, at 10,000 miles with the Defender, the power steering went out twice. Again, it's an issue that apparently Land Rover has fixed at this point with the new Defenders. And then I did need a new coolant line. That's another issue that Land Rover has apparently fixed with the new Defenders. So between the extra maintenance schedules that you have on the Toyotas, because they're going to be every 5,000 miles versus every 10,000 miles on the Land Rover Defender, and with me having some minor issues with the Land Cruiser, it has led me to spend just as much time, actually more time in the service department with this Toyota than I did with the Defender. And I probably would spend even less time if I bought a 2025 Plus Defender that has the power steering issue fixed and has the coolant line issue. So does this mean I'm going to go out and buy a Land Rover? Well, the short answer is no, and the longer answer is no, because resale value, and that's something we do need to mention in today's video too. This 200 series Land Cruiser is worth more than I paid for it just about 2 years ago, and this Lexus is worth roughly what I paid for it, even though it's a brand new car and I put 5,000 miles on it. The Defender, on the other hand, lost about $30,000 in value over 1 year and 10,000 miles, which is actually pretty similar to the Ineos Grenadier. Those British cars, they just don't hold their value all that well, and a big part of it just comes down to the perception of reliability. Now that I've been able to experience several Toyotas, you know, Land Rover, the Grenadier, Ford, Chevy, Dodge, all these other automakers, what I've come to realize is they all have about the same amount of problems when you actually use the cars as they're intended to be used. The one thing I will give to Toyota is there's, you know, fewer glitches on a day-to-day basis with the Toyotas. But the big benefit with Toyota is not buying it because it's going to be more reliable. It's actually just buying it because people think it's more reliable. And so when you go to sell it, you're going to sell it for more money, so you're going to lose less money. And this is the big point, the big reason why I made this video. Toyota isn't really going to save you money when it comes to maintenancing. Reliability, it's still going to give you a headache from time to time, just as much of a headache as the other automakers. Maybe a bigger headache because your expectations will be crushed when reality sets in. The biggest thing is that it just saves you money on resale. That is pretty much it. That is the biggest benefit to buying a Toyota over some of the other manufacturers. So I will leave all of you with this. You can't take your resale value with you to the grave. If there's a Land Rover or a Jeep or a Ford or something else that is not considered to be as reliable as Toyota that you really like, I think it's worth just going for, because my ownership experience with these Toyotas has not been any less stressful, has not had any fewer headaches than any of those other vehicles. The only real difference, you know, on a day-to-day basis is there's just less glitches. That's the big thing, right? With all these other automakers, you'll have a few more glitches from time to time, but outside of that, everything is pretty much the same. The maintenance is all the same. Stuff breaking is pretty much all the same if you use the vehicles as they're intended to be used. And so, you know, if you enjoy driving the Land Rover more, you enjoy driving a Bronco more, whatever it might be, then you enjoy driving the Toyota, then just go for that one. I'll see you.